Can you hear it? Welcome to Relay.
Yeah. You've been like this since yesterday when we did finish the stream. It's like,
Hello, are you receiving me?
what are you supposed to do? I've been waiting since. That's a brilliant comment, Ghost. I've been waiting for nearly 24 hours. You're just staring at me. The only thing you've done is go and get your thing and dress up like your ET or something. I've been expecting you to get in a basket and just drive off on a bicycle into the moonlight. Oh my God, you've moved. Does that mean we've got another panel to watch?
It does.
Oh God, he's talking.
I've turned myself on again.
Does that mean we're live?
It does. Hey everyone, we're live. What did Ghosts? Oh, yes. Hey everyone,
Possibly
we're live
the
again.
best one ever.
It's Canada up here, so I'm cold. Funny thing. So, Jesus, CitizenCon was last week. Last week, when we were in Texas, which, I mean, Texas, it's warm. Last week in Texas, it was actually warmer in Ottawa than it was in Texas. And yesterday it snowed here. So, yeah, I just thought I'd let people know. That's information that you all care about, right? Oh, do you want me to keep that on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I can say.
What if I put this on top of it?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I was going to say that people think that that's your headphone cable, but it's actually the hydraulic cable to actually make you move.
It's true.
We use it to animate. Like
hey,
Weekend at Bernie's.
Hey everyone, how you all doing? It's going to be a relatively quick one. We're just gonna bang this out and move on.
Data goes like that.
It's a fez. You just can't see the top of it. Well, we're gonna watch the physics panel because that was next on the list of panels that we wanted to watch. Then this is actually going to be the last panel for a little bit. Let me actually. I should have done this earlier, but give me 2 seconds here. I'm just going to pull this up here. I think I can show this. Yes, it's showing. Excellent. Schedule. So we watched the opening keynote. We watched the Principles of Flight yesterday, which was excellent. Loved it. We are now going to watch the Breathing Life into Physics, which is also excellent. You'll see. We're not going to bother with You Call That a Knife, because You Call That a Knife was literally two devs standing there being like, hey, do you guys want A, B, or C for the knife handle? And then, hey, do you guys want A, B, or C for the knife blade? And that was it.
And then at the end they said, "Call that a knife? This is a knife."
They didn't even say that. They just said, okay, we're going to spend the rest of the day building these. See you later. And apparently, unbeknownst to, anyone at Relay, apparently they were actually showing the progress at various times if you went back to that theater. But if you never went back to that theater, you never knew that. And you were kind of moving between panels during it was just, not terribly pleased with that. Anyway, so we're going to be skipping that one because there's literally no information. Then I'm going to try and maybe do Welcome to Lorville this weekend. We'll see how that goes. But By Design with Tony Zurovec is going to be waiting for Commander Llama, who's in chat, but he's still sick as is
Get well
Nakara.
soon.
Yeah.
Get well soon as well, Nakara.
Yeah. Pick stuff. Yeah, there was some very brief info, but it's not really anything we want to sit and watch, I don't think. Anyway, my point here is we're going to be waiting for the by design until we have Commander Llama, because Commander Llama has actually finished writing up something that will be going up on Relay soon, but it's... It kind of takes the entire Tony Z by design panel and distills it into English rather than Tony.
It's very good.
It's quite excellent. I'm really excited to get that up on the site probably over the weekend. But basically what I'm saying is we're going to need Commander Llama, because that is going to be a hell of a long panel to go through and talk about, and Commander Llama might be one of the only people that understands what Tony Z is talking about. So as always, keep an eye out for those. We'll probably just be jumping into them once we get people together. So there won't be much warning, but just letting you know what's happening for the next 2 panels or so. Okay. I guess let's... Shiver, are you ready for this? I think we're going to do it the same way.
am.
We're going to do, you know...
Oh,
3, 2,
Versa
1,
didn't
go.
get my joke. I'm sorry. Versa
Oh.
corrected himself on his bye, so he actually ended up writing bye. I
Oh.
couldn't help myself. I went, see you, Versa. I wasn't
Got it.
sure if it would translate to text. I'm sorry.
I get it. Okay, we're going to start this. We're going to do the same thing we did yesterday, where if we get to a point where we want to pause and talk, we'll just say pause and we'll talk. And if you guys have questions and stuff, talk to us as we go. Ready, Shiver?
Yes.
In 3, 2, 1, go.
Please welcome
you just flip me
Technical
off?
Director
Yes.
Sean
Twice.
Tracy
Yes.
And Senior Tools Programmer Andreas Rohr.
Okay.
Also, everyone, it was to him, not to you. To
Well,
him.
great. Thanks a lot for coming, guys.
What he'll say to me.
CitizenCon
Just finished.
2948.
If he doesn't stare.
So I've been doing these for a few years, so it's pretty fun. And I'm super happy that you guys came to our talk, because who cares about spaceships in a space game, right?
Exactly.
Let's hear about content and physics and
This to me was more interesting than the space
So,
flight one.
Before we get too far, I just want to introduce myself
saying.
and Andreas. For those that don't know me, I'm Sean
It's
Tracy,
hard
the
called when
technical
you've got
director
Sean
of
Tracy
content
or the flight
at
model,
Cloud
but
Imperium Games.
Sean
And
Tracy.
with me
Flight
on
Model 1.
stage today is Andreas
Sean
Rohr.
Tracy always-
He's one of our
Have you
senior
seen this
tool
yet, Shiver?
programmers out of Frankfurt.
No.
So thanks a lot
Yeah,
for
you're gonna
flying all the
see.
way out
You're
from
gonna see
Frankfurt.
why we made the
He works
right
very close
choice
with our engine guys.
of
and
picking
a lot of
Sean
stuff that we're
Tracy.
gonna show you today. So
We made
really
the
happy to have
right
him here with us
choice. Anyone who hasn't seen this yet,
All right, so
Oh,
let's dive
get
right
ready.
in. Now, this is a bit of an introduction. I want to talk about what we're actually going to do here. So, environments and even characters in some cases within Star Citizen have arguably been a bit static, and recently the physics, engine, and game teams have been making a really concerted effort into helping bring some life into basically all our scenes and with our content using physics.
you have no idea
on
what
our
you're about to
assets.
see.
So this talk is going to cover some of the work that they've been doing, and some of the features that aren't in design are now able to start using within Star Citizen and Squadron 42. So before I get too far, I really want to give a big shout out to the guys that have actually done this work and allowed us to kind of represent it and show you guys today, because this is super early stuff. We've only been kind of having this online in the last, let's say, month and a half, 2 months or so. So I'm really happy for guys like Chris Rain and the physics gurus over in Frankfurt to kind of let us show you this in a very early state. They were quite nervous, obviously, about that. I'm a little crazier. I want to show you guys all this stuff all the time. But of course, this is really important that I give them a really nice shout out. And we're really lucky to be able to kind of stand up here and represent those guys. Okay, so let's actually talk
Yeah,
about what
Sean
we're gonna
Tracy
talk about.
talks a lot,
The
but he's
talk is
not
split into two
quite
sections.
as
First, we're going to talk about environments. And this is going to include
fast
things
as
like
Tony
Planet
Z.
Wind. We're going to talk about the Wind
Planet Wind.
Entity, which is something new for us.
Planet
We're going
Wind,
to talk about
Shiver.
kind of an animated asset or content versus
I've
a
had
simulated
mornings like that.
asset. So doing physics to move it around, or basically having some sort of pre-canned animation. Then we're going to talk about environment cloth itself. So this is our entity cloth, we call it. Then after that, I'm going to pass it over to Andreas, and he's going to talk about character cloth. Now,
do it
this
right
is unified now with our environment tech, and this wasn't the case up until now. Then we're going to show you a bit of a demonstration with the implementation that we use right now, because obviously you do have cloth-on characters and stuff in the game already. But it's a pendulum simulation versus a vertex simulation. Just show you guys the differences between the two. We'll show you a bit of the actual workflow that we're using and that he's still developing right now, so that the artist can work on this a little bit faster. And then we'll show you a little demonstration of a multi-layered cloth. So this is the thing that we couldn't achieve before.
Okay.
Content. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the physics of the future.
Basically, what they're saying is we're going to show you
that's
some
a nice
pretty
one.
things.
We'll sell that one. All right.
Okay.
So why do we want to simulate things physically? Now, using physics simulation at
Nice, Carbide.
runtimes in games is often preferable to using sort of pre-baked animations, especially when placed in dynamic environments. So what do I mean by a dynamic environment? Dynamic weather and wind, it needs to kind of support things like weather effects. You need to be able to do player collision. You need to be able to react to explosions that are nearby. You need to be able to react to AI collisions. All kinds of things that will change around it. So you can't just pre-can an animation asset and do that. You'd rather simulate that physically, but there's problems with that. Obviously comes performance implications and things like this, so we had to solve all of these. So generally when activity is going on near the objects, it should be reacting appropriately. The other thing to why to use these physics is actually content creation itself becomes way, way easier. When we have to make an asset that's just simply animated, it actually goes through a lot of teams. So it goes from design to art to rigging to animation, back to design, and finally in the game. That's a lot of people to go through, and especially when you're in
And what
an
he's talking
international
about there
corporation, and
is
that's gonna go
what
through time
basically
zones, that
every
takes a
single
while.
game does.
Instead of just having a designer
Animated
take an
objects
asset
go
and it's
through
ready
all of
to
that.
go. So what has been the state of simulating such assets for us up until now? Well, it's been really expensive, as I mentioned, in terms of performance, and generally relied on Lua. Now, if you've been keeping track of our object container streaming work, you'll know that we had to remove Lua completely from the engine. This was a huge deal to do. And what that meant was things that were previously working before didn't work at all anymore. So, it's not that this isn't revolutionary by any stretch, but we did have access to similar things, but there were big assumptions that those older entities were making. And the biggest assumptions of the pre-existing entities were things like assuming Z up, like Z is always going to be up, or Z, I'm sorry, I'm Canadian.
No, it's Zed. Zed.
And ultimately, they hadn't changed much
He's
since
Canadian.
earlier versions of the
Oh,
engine,
he
so they
said-
just weren't suitable at our scale, nor for
Nice,
the
Shiver.
performance implications that we have. So we'd already tried a few techniques previously, but they've either proved too expensive, and I'm sure you've seen them within demos, tarps floating in the wind, flags, and things like this. They were either too expensive to run on a planet, or the tools and entities just didn't work anymore. So generally, we didn't really have a planet-side location that needed a lot of this, so it wasn't as big of a deal, but now with Hurston, as you've seen, there's wind, there's atmosphere, there's lots of stuff going on near these objects, so it's very important that we brought
I have
this
nothing to say so far. It's
so,
just,
and again, thanks to our amazing work by our physics gurus back in Frankfurt, new implementations are now usable by art and design for things like constraints, soft bodies, environment cloth, and last but not least, character cloth. All right.
Uh-oh, Rudy's here.
So, as you saw already in the demo, we have wind on planets. So even tweakable to each of the planets and even to each of the ecosystems, which is really cool. So this was created by our planet technology team. This helps give tons more movement and life to otherwise a really static environment. If you saw those trees just sitting there, not moving at all, it would take you back to the
And I think we
early
did talk
2000s,
about this
early
while we
90s
were
of games
watching
where
the
stuff could
keynote.
move around.
How
As
damn
mentioned
good
previously,
the
this
trees and
whole
the
wind
grass
system,
looked,
it
right?
did exist, and we had wind for levels. But again, this would
I really
only,
wanna know how
this
they've done
needed to
that
be
grass,
rewritten to
because
work in a non-flat
that's good-looking
2D world,
grass.
basically.
Yes.
This is actually
And not
involved around
this
the sphere.
2D shit you see
So
of it,
the-
because
the
you
wind-
always cheat on grass.
Yeah.
So much.
In the end, has to
you
be
cheat on
relative to this a spherical position on the planet. So you can imagine how that's actually a little bit difficult. So changes were mostly related to making that work in 3D on a sphere. So the second type of wind,
Acid.
Sorry, let me show you a quick video here. So this is the savanna biome that you
Which,
saw a little bit
again,
of.
looks
I'm
glorious.
actually right behind. Right in front of the crashed satellite in this particular video. And I just wanted to do a quick pan because you see how much life already that brings. So you see leaves moving in the wind. You see it
Those
affecting
lovely
the particles.
trees.
You see it
Yeah.
affecting the grass. And again,
And they
this is
actually,
the wind
like,
flowing through. This just happened.
It's not just the leaves; it's the whole
So now, again, this is set on a
trunk
per
of the
biome
tree
level.
that's
In the
So
right
even
place.
at a per biome level,
And if you look,
that scale is
they're
pretty
all different.
gigantic.
Yep. It just
You know,
So
one's
now
going,
on a much
it's
more
more realistic
isolated
rather than
level,
just
we have a
in
new
a scripted.
type of wind
Yes.
that all mixes in within the.
You know,
the
it
planet
is
wind,
speed tree,
and
but
it's supported. It's called
it's
wind
pretty.
area entity. So this is what you see an image of here and here. So the wind area itself physically simulates the air with a given resistance, viscosity, and it moves in a user-defined direction at a user-defined speed. And users, meaning the designers, basically. They can select this entity and set all of these things really, really quickly. So generally, if no direction is set, the wind source moves omnidirectionally. And that's what you see on this image here. It's actually a sphere of wind. So this is all emanating from a single point outwards. And then if you give it a direction, you can see that we have these nice little debug arrows. And that's going to actually give it a very specific direction that it is. So this gives the designers the ability to actually localize their wind a lot more realistically. The other thing we do with these is we like to attach them to things. Those things like the back of a ship.
Shiver,
for example.
shiver.
We've got thrusters and things like that.
you got to be watching
So
this.
both of these eventually need to work into the weather system that Chris Roberts is obviously very keen for us to start working on.
Weather.
But these are
Remember
the
when we
stepping
were
stones
talking
into
about weather
something
a
like
couple
this.
months ago?
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about an animated cloth versus this new extended cloth entity. So sometimes animation is suitable to do, especially if the player's not going to be near it or nobody's going to really affect it. But again, it kind of has to go through a lot of people. So it's not that great because it's not affected by dynamics in the end. So let me show you a quick example of that going on. So on the left, we have a pre-baked one. Now, all these little gizmos you see there are
Looks
actually
all right,
joints. So there's
right?
like there's 30, 40 joints moving this around. Now, these two tarps are actually placed on boxes. I've removed the boxes, obviously. So it takes a certain amount of markup to still get our entity cloth reacting to this. I've also got now a wind entity that we just talked about, and I'm going to move it over the dynamic one. Did the video pause? Why did the video pause?
The videos kept pausing.
I'm sorry, I got excited and I clicked on it. So you see, as it moves around, that actually reacts very realistically to it. And again, it's marked up as if it's on boxes, and we do this just with vertex colors. So we can make an asset, we can mark it up, and as you see, when I move the wind entity over the animated object,
Nothing happens.
happens, right? Because this is just a pre-canned animation doing the same thing, and this will collide with players. This will move into any the wind direction changes, and as you see, I'm just pulling it all over it. So if any explosion happens, if anything dynamic happens, it's going to react appropriately. So that sort of gives you a good example of
Simple.
Wow.
there we go.
Simple.
A good example of why sometimes you
That
want
is
to make this
nothing.
dynamic rather than pre-canned sort of animation. And again, it saves on our joints, saves on animation, saves on a lot of work. So let's show a couple of the features of this extended cloth entity. So this is kind of a fun thing. Now, our physics guru, Chris Rain, really wanted us to do this really nice
This
sort of
is-
ship reveal
this is
with a
so
nice
cool.
satin cloth and everything, but we had a lot of work to do for this demo and some other stuff later on. So it's close. It's close to what he wanted. I hope he's happy with it. So the physics team, similar to the RIN, had to rewrite this cloth entity implementation completely from scratch. It was really important because we had some trouble with earlier versions, and it's not only that it didn't work at the scale of planets and assume things like Z up, but there was other problems with the earlier implementations within the engine, anyways. And most of these problems related to instabilities within the simulation, and what that would cause is something called, we kind of call it poly soup. It's like a big ball of polygons that just can't recover from the simulation. So you can't ship a game with that kind of stuff. If we shipped it out to you and you had an interaction like that, I mean, that's not acceptable to us, so we had to change that. So major culprits of poly soup are usually the topology of the asset
Major
itself,
culprits.
and without going too deep into it, the geometry being simulated has to be really regular faces, or the
He
the
talks
face areas
so
have to be the
fast.
same. Otherwise, you'd end up with this sort of poly soup ball. Ultimately, the issue was that the topology of the render mesh and the simulation itself were coupled. So basically, whatever your render mesh topology was, that was how it was going to simulate. We've decoupled that now. Lastly, we didn't have self-collision before.
Everything
so
is
cloth
better
couldn't
decoupled.
collide with itself. That's an important component because it means you can have freely flowing cloth, meaning not attached to anything. You've probably seen it in a million games. They have, a tapestry up on the wall or just something hanging from something. And very seldom do you ever see free-flowing cloth just moving around.
Never.
South Park
Sean
in the world.
Tracy
So
is going to turn
let's
into
get this
Tony
video
Z
going,
in,
'cause I'm already
you know,
going over.
years.
Yes.
The speech will
All
slow
right, so I got a
down,
quick
but the
video. I just
technical
threw
will
an
go.
M50 down on Daymar, and I got a couple deck crew taking care of it. I was getting lonely.
Tarp.
So you see, I spawn up this cloth, and it keeps pausing. Sorry about that. I spawn the cloth in, and I just turn on our AI physics, and basically physics starts simulating, and that drapes over the ship just as you would expect it to. So now I keep playing around with it a little bit, and there's so many different properties actually exposed directly to the designers for something like that. So I need to mention that this is a hyper-efficient
Hot damn.
simulation.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of, it's a user-defined variable for friction.
Yeah.
Right, so we can pull the ship
Look
out.
at that.
And I can change the friction so that that thing will slide right off, or it will kind of hold on to it. But now I'm going to do
It's
something
such
a
a
little
stupid
more
thing to get
extreme.
excited
Watch
about.
that. No.
But it is
This-
something to get excited
Shiver,
about.
this is what you get excited about right here.
Keep pausing. So there you can see it fold up upon itself.
see
and
what
we're
just
going to run
happened?
it again just to show you again. It never gets to a state that it can't recover in terms of the simulation, and it's always going. It's a purely deterministic simulation, regardless of the frame rate and time step size, which is a big deal for us. It's also unconditionally stable, so it's never going to explode and will fully recover. So, and I mentioned those wind entities before and sort of attaching them to the back of the ships. And I was just wiggling it around under it just to
He's
show
a
you
witch.
how dynamic that stuff actually is. So let's say you had, I don't know, a little flag on the ship, or, you know, you might have a Superman ship with a cape on it. Who knows? Why do these videos keep pausing? So I dropped it on the back, and I've got a little wind entity actually attached to the back. So let's turn on the ship. Yeah. And it blows off onto these poor guys back there. So we'll do that one more time because, I don't know, they need it. So now you can see their heads poking through. That was my fault, actually, on the topology of the asset itself. It just needed to be a little bit tighter for collision. And you can see that that wind is still going on and it flutters down onto them quite nicely. So
Jesus.
I'm
Okay,
going a little
we're
bit
gonna-
over time,
we're gonna
so I'm not gonna
pause
go
here
over
for a second.
Too deep of the other.
Good,
Wow.
Shiver?
Yeah, I'm with Carbide Edge.
Yeah.
We need to clean up. That's amazing. How? And it's not ever gonna freak out like you could see in pretty
Anything
much any
else.
game with a physics engine.
As I'm sure pretty much everyone knows, the Dark Souls series' corpse ragdolls are phenomenal, because anytime anything contacts one of those corpse ragdolls, they wig out and fly all over. I don't know what I literally don't understand what they've done or how they've done it.
At that cost, at that low cost. That's the most amazing thing of that. That's just going to be happening within your game area. No matter, it doesn't matter. That's mad. How? He's a witch.
It's nuts. Like, yeah, I don't know what to say. Commander Llama. Carbide Edge is like, this is not, they could have released with pre-baked animations like pretty much every single other game that's ever released, quite frankly. But what they've got here is something more. That looks like, I mean, it's still a game. You've still got little issues, but that looks like real life.
I kind of wish we could have bribed with sex favors Acid to come on and explain in a way that other people can understand why that's a big deal. It's so stupid. The little time, but it really does react. It's not going to fall through the world. It's not going to freak out and, you know.
The way I understand it kind of is, especially the really the really impressive thing there is that they were able to drop it on itself, and it's not just that it freaked out. It's itself is this entire object, and it was able to deal with it folding up on itself and then continue the physics simulation and spread out as it should. And
now we're all going to get that UEE trench coat now, aren't we?
yes. I think it was 6Fs and Caps, Mr. White at the time. It was either him or Commander Llama, I don't remember which, but was saying at the time of this panel that like they've played with like actual physics cloth simulators, right? You can get like high-end cloth simulators, and even those can't do this. They can't deal with cloth falling on itself. It is yeah.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Kinchello. It's not just cloth. It's got so many knock-on effects. I mean, even down to water, the way that water is going to act is governed by the same set of physics. So it as you saw in the demo, it needed to be put in the physics grid itself, the player, before it reacted. But then it reacted accurately, and that is a physics grid issue. They haven't even really tackled physics grids yet. That's going to come.
Well, and two more
cool.
like Ghost says, this is just version 1. They were saying that they had to build this because OCS broke what they had before. So this isn't even all that old, if we're being honest. This is less than a year old, theoretically, right?
Hey, Romac.
Hey, Romac. The other thing is, there was something else I was going to say, but I think I forgot it. Oh, no. Keep in mind, one of the things Sean Tracy was saying there is he was mentioning that before everything sort of assumed Z up. This doesn't have to assume Z up, which also means this will be functional in 0G. Right?
True.
So you'll have free floating cloth in a shipwreck, and you'll push through it, and it will conform to you as you push through it, and that's nuts. Yeah, and we're gonna start the video up again to keep going through it, because they do talk about more, but it's just. It's really, really impressive stuff.
Needlessly insane, if you see what I mean. Right now, I mean, yeah, it's all cool that you can have a cloth reactor. There's no big deal. If it was just the cloth, they wouldn't bother. This is obviously... The cloth is just... the cloth is just... well, we can do this right now, and it's compared to what we want to do. This is a piece of piss, Yeah. So we'll just cloth react realistically, and we can show that off. But then next year it'll be like, look at this tidal wave. Oh, bollocks. And things like that.
Well, they do have a planet that has periodic tidal waves that move across the entire surface of the planet. So, and yeah, Acid has a good point. That's this simulation is a lot of work to do, but it's also going to save a lot of work in all of the static animations that they would have had to do. And filling an entire universe with static animations is busy. And
it looks boring as fuck. Because everything, you could have 3-4 different animations, and that's it. You're like,
it already takes someone hours to do one canned animation.
Yeah.
They take a lot of time. Okay, are you ready? We're going to continue this in 3, 2, 1, go.
The other things, but again, this is early times. You guys are going to see tons of this now within the environments. Yeah, I'll pass it over to Andreas, who I sucked up 2 minutes of your time. I am so sorry.
Well, hopefully
they were on a tight schedule.
Thanks, Sean. All right, so I'm going to talk about character cloth. As Sean has told you, the solver had been rewritten completely from scratch. Previously, we've had 2 different pipelines, 2 different solvers, and that's always like a pain in the... It's a big pain to maintain these 2 things.
This looks good. I like this one.
It needs like separate teams.
Thank you, Jack.
Like, yeah.
Thanks,
so
Jack
the
Avalon.
unification is really a big deal for us. And let me tell you a little bit more about how the previous system worked that Sean has mentioned, this so-called pendulum simulation. So imagine like the characters, all our characters in the game, they have this internal skeleton, which is made up of joints or bones, as they're called. And these pendulums are essentially extensions of these skeletons. So they were used primarily to attach more kind of rigid, like simple objects, like for instance grenades, attach them to a body, or like a rocket launcher at the back of your back. And whenever you moved, this stuff like wiggled slightly around. And it wasn't originally not really supposed to be used for more complex, simulating more complex types of objects, such as cloth, shirts, capes, trench coats, whatever. So what they did was, like in earlier titles that used the system, they created ropes of these basically joined chains and created several of them and connected them together so they would form something like a sheet of cloth. But the real resolution of these things was always very, very coarse, so it always lacked in terms of like fidelity. And now with this vertex cloth approach, you have the ability to put a lot more detail into these meshes, and that results in much better
Okay, Shiver,
simulations. So
get ready for
as you
this.
can see here, which side is which? So vertex cloth,
Bishop.
the new stuff is on the left, and you can see all these wrinkles going on, creases, folds forming dynamically, reacting to the animation of the player. The thing is,
Look at
like
that.
in general, like,
Look
in
at
terms
that
of
trench
character
coat.
cloth, the problem with character cloth is that characters are much more dynamic than environments. So even though with a new cloth, our environment cloth can be more dynamic and can move about in the environment theoretically, primarily it will be curtains or tarps, flags. This kind
I
of
think
stuff.
they can
Cloth on a
change the
character
weight of it
needs
later,
to undergo
Flint,
much more
I think.
stress because who knows what the player ends up doing with the character. They jump out of their ship and expect to land somewhere, and their cloth still looking nice
But
and neat.
that looks
So
impressive.
for the physics solver, that's high, like very demanding. So we're quite happy that this new solver is very stable. It doesn't explode. Sometimes, like for more extreme cases, you need to help the solver a little bit, and that's why we have these markup tools for. So I worked in the film industry on cloth simulation and soft body simulation for a number of years. And in the film industry, there is this, well, the industry standard there is digital content creation package called Maya, and that inside has a solver that's called NCloth. And wait a second, yeah, so let me just, yeah.
So many
this
fucking
particular
windows.
solver is
I know.
Industry standard. It's quite robust. It's easy to author.
So this is Maya.
So my idea was, instead of creating new authoring tools within our sandbox editor, which is a significant amount of work to do that, let's just use Maya because, for instance,
what
all our
plague
character
work
rigs
by-
are already authored in Maya. The character animations are authored there. All the character assets are put together in Maya and then exported. It paused again. So that's why it made all kinds of sense to also do the cloth setup authoring there.
I kind of like this
what you can
because
see here
normally
is-
CIG are like, hey, let's add tools,
through
let's
really
add
quick.
tools. And in
By
this case,
painting
they were like,
these, what
well,
we call
the tool already
vertex
exists.
attributes,
Let's just
you can define, for instance,
use it.
how far like the cloth is attached to the rigidly deforming mesh.
So what they're doing there is they're setting
By
the
doing
parts
that,
of the
you
cloth
can kind of
that
guide the
don't
simulation
move.
in places where
So
you know,
they're
there-
rigid. The
it's gonna
white
be
stuff
like-
is rigid, and then the rest is
there could be
free flowing.
problems when it gets pushed between collision objects, for instance, and then even the most stable simulation could run into problems. It paused. It has its own will for some reason. So in this case, I authored it in a way so that the attributes that you can use are exactly like a mirror of this NCloth tool that you can have in Maya. And the reason for that is that artists can already use a tool that they are familiar with. They can author it in exactly the same way. Even the words, the descriptions of the attributes are the same, and that way I think they can be much more productive. So the main problem with the previous system, is that the mouse? No, was that the authoring part was very cumbersome and very limiting. And through this system, we're going to be able to create the most complex of setups that I think you have seen in games. Sean has already shown, or we've already seen the example of the trench coat on Bishop. But the real deal is like this, what we call layered cloth, where you have like separate, different layers of cloth interacting with each other.
Multiple layers, Shiver. Multiple layers.
That's what I'm going to show you next. So this is probably the worst case example of
cake.
What you can have. So
yes,
here,
this is so good.
That's not the final product, but
I kind of
yes,
want this
I
as a
think
final
when you're a physics programmer and you've been working on your code for so long, the first moment you see stuff like that, it's like you're super happy because that's already a big breakthrough. We've color-coded these individual sheets so we can see where they interpenetrate if they do, but it's already
I am tablecloth man.
It was one of the first tests we did. So Chris
look
Rain
at this,
has really done
like
a tremendous job
Jesus.
there.
Like, look at that.
Yeah, so
The thing is,
yes, so that is
you could
one
not
of the
do
Hurston
that by
security
hand.
guards,
Like, you
I
could
think,
not animate that by hand. It would
it's
take
just amazing
a
how
year.
complex
You could, but
this stuff
fuck
is, and
that.
it's still-
It would take a
it
year.
looks like impeccable.
Ye-
Looks similar to like an offline cloth simulation. And ultimately,
Okay,
with
maybe
this
not
system,
draw
what
that.
I'd like to
I can't
do
think of anyone that would draw that
is, like,
detail.
simulate as many objects as we can. Like currently, most of these more like dangling, free-hanging cloth things are simulated. But there are other things like even if you have like trousers that aren't super.
Does it only
tight,
work if you walk on the
even
spot?
if those
Yes.
have like a tiny
Makes it
amount
kind of
degree
awkward, but
freedom
yes.
to move, then your entire animation will look more dynamic and more believable. And if we end up doing this on the entire body, I think we'll have really like amazing looking characters in the future. Right. So
I'd
talking
imagine
about
this
future,
makes all
Sean
of the
is going to
character artists
give you a
very
bit of
happy.
an overview of what's coming up next.
Because they probably before had to say, no, that's too much cloth on a character. And now they can be like,
that last bit there.
cloth them up.
And this was some great work, literally in the last week, from some super good tech artists.
And that's the other thing, a
Gage
week.
Tallman, Marcy Lee, Chris.
Big
and,
Trouble in
Forrest,
Little
as well as
Space
the
China.
physics program.
That's what it looks like.
Chris Rain and the physics team there. So big props to them for doing this. That was the idea. So the comment was no clipping, definitely. And that's the whole idea of that there's self-collision, that we can do that layered cloth, and it's not necessarily something that we could do with pendulum cloth before. So it's going to let us kind of do the Queen Amidala cape, dragging on the ground, going down the stairs, and these kind of things is going to be pretty awesome. So some of the future stuff that the physics guys are okay with us kind of mentioning a little bit. Something called deformables. This might be something. This is all R&D and kind of, hopefully we can do this. But this was something we tried out in one of the early games on an earlier implementation of the engine. Deformables is something that will react to.
Is he going to talk about them here?
The easiest way that I've ever had to explain it is like imagine it simulating like a cloth for a single frame. So that once something deforms and it holds rigid. So we could deform things like sides of the ships, sides of buildings, doors, train containers, whatever you can think of. So train containers, sea containers. Yeah, there's trains in Hurston, we're good. Further performance improvements, it's already orders of magnitude faster than what we had before. So this is going to be very, very accomplishable within the game, and you guys will see it quite soon. Tessellation, so even getting further basically density on those assets that you see. Something we mentioned a little bit called sign distance fields. That's something I was hoping we could talk about today. Not quite ready to talk about it. This is something we're going to do to massively optimize collisions and to do some work basically with effects like shields and things. To just make them conform a little bit more to the ships. It's going to be quite nice. Tearing, so imagine that cloth being able to tear, maybe shoot some holes in it. That'll be quite cool. And then even better, and this is something that's online, not quite ready to show it, but our soft bodies, and soft body's not just a cloth, soft body is something that has volume but is squishy. So like a pillow or like a duvet or something like this. So then on top of that, we want soft body to soft body collisions, of course, so that'll be quite cool. And many more things that I'm sure are sitting in their brain that will come up. Yeah, of course. So with that, we want to give some big special thanks in alphabetical order. So that to Ali Brown, Director of Graphics Programming, Chris Rain, as I've mentioned, Senior, I'm actually not sure what his title is. He's a physics guru. That's fine. Math wizard. Gage Hallman, tech artist on the cloth. Forrest Stefan helped with the captures. Ivo Herzeg, implemented that pendulum simulation that we are sitting there talking crap about. Jens Lind, gameplay engineer.
Ivo is
Milan
nuts.
Paycheck.
Ivo is
Management
nuts.
of this presentation. Marcy Lee,
Madman. He's a madman.
Rob Dixon, tech artist in the UK. Also
Well, I mean,
working on
this
the
is the
asset, and
thing
then
with everyone at
Thomas,
CIG. They are highly passionate about their job, and
Yeah.
this is
that they help.
they've been given this opportunity rather than we need this done at this time of we need this done.
So thanks
Go
for your time,
nuts.
guys. Really appreciate you coming.
And one of the things is it's not
That was
just
very good.
it's not just we need this, get it done. It's we need this. But can you think of something better? Because if you do, just let us know. Or if you think of something that, not even something that we need, but, oh, hey, this thing would be cool. I think I know how to do it. Go nuts. Do it. Do whatever it takes.
You're going to have puddles forming naturally on the ground, on textures, and that's insane.
Well, what's insane to me is, one, they already said that what they have, and they've only had this implemented for a couple of weeks, they were saying, is already orders of magnitude better than what they had before, and they're still going to be able to get more performance improvements out of it, and tearing. Like, just... So, in my opinion, this was the better of the two panels between this and the flight model. Shiver?
It was a better panel, yeah. I can't dispute that. But I would still have gone to the flight.
Rain bouncing off clothes. And not just rain bouncing off clothes, rain getting on clothes, and then the clothes getting heavier, so the physics affecting them differently. So your wet clothes not swinging as much because they're wet.
God, it's bad that we're getting excited about that. That's so fucking cool.
It's so friggin' cool. And the deformables is really cool too. The idea of an explosion going off outside, like at the edge of your ship on the hull, and the hull actually crumpling in due to the weight of the explosion, and then freezing. What they were talking about is the ability to impact something with a physics force, and then when the physics force is taken away, it doesn't change. It stays impacted by the physics force. That's just nuts.
Yeah, it's got the potential for because they're actually going to be simulating projectiles when you fire them, that you are going to have battle scars from where you were actually hit. And if you that could be quite cool when you get out afterwards and you survive. You look at it and you go, shit, that was like that close to hitting the reactor and blowing me out. That's cool.
All of this is cool. Like, this is just, I love.
Most importantly, we're going to have snowball fights on Microtech.
Yes. Yeah. I have a feeling that even the CIG don't know the kind of uses they'll be able to get out of this yet. Yeah, Commander Llama, I'd agree. I would like to see it running. But he did say that we're going to see it very soon. So maybe 3.4 or 3.5 will actually start to be able to see this, because at least a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, the soft body collisions, the tearing, more stuff that they were talking about that they can't show yet, but is almost done.
Like that amount of detail, with it being actually simulated rather than just pre-rendered texture or pre-made animation. It's not original, but it's fucking cool.
Sorry, Fast Cart. Someday I will fix that. Someday. But that's all we had to watch today and talk about today. And yeah, there's talk about some of this stuff in a different panel, the making things pretty, the VFX panel, which is also a pretty good panel. We'll see that soon. Not sure when we're going to stream the next panel, which is well, let's flip over to the schedule. Not sure when we're going to stream Welcome to Loreville. Depends on when they put it up, but I've also got a pretty hellish weekend. So just keep an eye out on Discord and on Twitter. Check in with Shiver and possibly me and possibly Nakara tomorrow night on the Faux Friday night show. Nakara is going to try and run a stream tomorrow if he's feeling better. I haven't had an update yet on how he's doing, but with any luck, he'll be able to do that. And then on Sunday, I am on the Bases Roundtable, so come join me for that. And then sometime next week, when I can sort of capture Shiver and Commander Llama, we'll do the by design. So that's all. That's it for us. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Yeah, sorry, Fast Cart, you came in just at the end. We're just signing off.
Dated girls like that. Does this mean you're going to stare at me 24 hours a day?
Yes, it does. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you guys in the verse.